我们现在
好，
开始请法。
Okay, so good evening everyone. Welcome to tonight's Sutra lecture. We'll begin with our Dharma request. So I invite everyone to please put your palms together as we invite the presence of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the three jewels of the 10 directions and 3 periods of time. 好，欢迎大家来听法。我们今天来先请法，请诸佛菩萨三宝来住持道场。好，阿弥陀佛，可以开始，可以 start。
恭敬大舍三听，为此法会，济一切众生，请转冒烦论，教得我们如何了善透此离苦得乐。速证无上。The Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death, and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo Saranto Suchetoye Arahati Samya Sambuddhoye.
Namo saranto suchadoya alahari samya sambuddhoshe
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。
Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in billions of eons. But now we see and hear it, and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. All Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, all good and wise Dharma friends here and present online, Amitabha. Welcome to tonight's Sutra lecture, where we get to continue to learn about Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land. And Amitabha Buddha has been introduced. Somebody this week asked me about, why go Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land? I don't know. I thought we're supposed to suffer and learn from it, and Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land just seems too happy. I don't know about going there. And I thought, well, yeah, it's true. Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land is a very happy place, but it's not. You say it this way: to cultivate, we don't actually have to suffer. It might be surprising to people, but actually, cultivation is not about suffering as much as possible. It's about developing wisdom and compassion. And I think people might discover, actually, when you start to cultivate, that actually it's very joyful to cultivate. It's very joyful to be with good friends, doing wholesome things. And in Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land, you get to be surrounded by good friends doing wholesome things all the time. And you wake up in the morning and there's birds chirping, and these birds remind you about reciting the Buddha's name. So for instance, we arrive back at Berkeley Buddhist Monastery, and what do we see? We see Dharma Master Jing Fo sticking his head out the window. Oh, look, everyone's back. Now he comes with this wooden fish reciting the Buddha's name. So, this is how we're greeted at the monastery. And a lot of fun. Everyone's reciting together with Dharma Master Jing Fo, and it's a very celebratory kind of experience, right? We have our meal together. We have a chance to learn the Dharma from good teachers who have a good sense of humor. And so learning the Dharma and cultivation doesn't actually have to mean that we suffer a lot. It actually means that we take our experience and learn and grow from it. And so the Pure Land is this wonderful place where the entire environment is designed to help us grow in the Dharma in a natural, joyful way. Whereas oftentimes in our world, we meet things that can overwhelm us. Something very dramatic happens. And if our cultivation is not, you could say, grounded enough, we get swept away in the afflictions, in worry, in doubt, in anger. Oftentimes we get angry, and all of a sudden, whatever that person's doing, we're going to have to make sure that they know that they're wrong. Or, it's like or sometimes it's obsession, right? We get addicted to something, and our mind just keeps thinking about it, and we can't sleep well. There's so many ways that in our samsaric world, we get overwhelmed. And in the Pure Land, that doesn't happen. And it's not because we're not cultivating, it's because we've set up the intentions and vows and connected with Amitabha Buddha's vows so that we can be in another field, a field of goodness, compassion, and wisdom. And cultivation is like sailing with the Dharma wind behind our back, rather than kind of sailing with the wind against us, trying to go upstream. And the moment we stop our efforts, we start to go backwards. So this is why I think Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land is so wonderful. And for those who are thinking, well, I don't know if I want to wait until after I die to go to the Pure Land. I say, yeah, actually, many of the spiritual masters, teachers say that actually the Pure Land is right here, right now. You know, you can say it's maybe another dimension. It's another frequency that we can actually tune into. Amitabha Buddha's light's always shining on us. If we can just tune into that frequency, right? Light is just a wavelength of electromagnetic field. So we can just tune into Amitabha Buddha's light. We can actually be in his kind of field, right? We're in his field. And what is that like? Is that experience where our lives are peaceful, happy, and we grow in the Dharma very naturally. No force required. It becomes effortless. And all required is Namo Amitabha. Recite Namo Amitabha. So that's what we'll do in the beginning here. We'll recite Namo Amitabha to tune into the frequency of Amitabha Buddha. 好，我今天简单的讲一下，我们今天这个礼拜有一个居士呢，就问我说：“哎呀，我不知道要不要去极乐世界，我以为修行要很苦啊，极乐世界太快乐了，怎么会修行？”我想，我们修行不一定要很苦，我们修行是为了有智慧、有慈悲心，这个是重要的。我们在极乐世界呢，是一个非常好的一个环境修行，所以我们要修行就是自然就可以修行。我们的旁边的都是好人，我们的附近、我们的环境都是来提醒我们要常念三宝。像我们早上起来又听到鸟的声音，这个鸟声音就是像告诉我们，我们要念佛、念法、念僧。刚刚讲个比喻，就像我们从红木禅林回到 Berkeley， 今天可能11点钟左右进佛室呢，他就看到他在窗户里面看我们，大家回来了，大笑了，看到我们，很高兴看到大家，他就出来，然后出来又怎么样呢？在念佛，南无阿弥陀佛，大家都笑了，跟进佛一起念佛。这个呢，可以说很快乐啊，很快乐啊。但是我们没有很快乐，就是来听什么数音乐，还是做一些跳舞啊，还是做一些不好的事情呢？是大家很快乐一起念佛，可以在一起来学习佛法。所以这个，我想我们在修行的时候，不是要一个很苦、很悲伤的一件事情，这个是也可以说快快乐乐的、很自然的就可以修行。这个为什么极乐世界这么难得，这么好？因为我们发愿要去跟阿弥陀佛的愿有相应，念佛，我们就可以去极乐世界，就这样子的一个非常好的环境修行。但是有人说，我不知道，我不想等到我往生的时候还去极乐世界。在很多禅师呢，他们说我们当下现在就可以去极乐世界。这个极乐世界，这个净土是净心，这样说吗？净心的净土，清净的心就是净土，
净土，
对不对？清净的心就是净土。怎么说呢？如果我们把心可以静下来，我们可以很自然的来修行，我们就可以说跟阿弥陀佛的无量光就有这个相应。就是我们可能几个月前学习阿弥陀佛的无量光照3000大千世界，终身都有受到阿弥陀佛的无量光。所以我们念佛呢，就可以说是提醒我们，阿弥陀佛的无量光就在我们的身上，在照透我们的身体。所以这个呢，是一个非常可以说不可思议的一个怎么说？不可思议的教体吗？还是一个境界？还是一个I try to find Chinese word. It's really amazing that we can connect with Amitabha Buddha. 很不可思议，我们可以跟阿弥陀佛这样子的一个关系，这么好的一个可以说善知识。所以我们念佛是非常难得的，所以我们先开始来一起念佛，可以来跟阿弥陀佛的光明相应。
阿弥陀佛的门槛很低的。 它很低，它不会很高，你跨不过去，不会的，它是很低，它的欢迎，随时欢迎去阿弥陀佛那里去修行，因为阿弥陀佛去那里修行是将来可以成佛的。
好，门槛是 the door ticket, the ticket threshold. Oh. Singapore says the threshold to get into Amitabha Buddhist Pure Land is very low. He doesn't have very high, requirements. He says he welcomes everyone. Everyone is welcome to join, and so you just have to recite the Buddha's name. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Then let's recite. Namo Amitabha. Namo Amitabha. Namo OK， 好，诸佛菩萨、仙公上人，以及在座的法师，还有我们在座的修行佛友，还有线上的佛友，大家晚安。 So all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, Dharma Masters, and all good and wise friends, both present and online. Amitabha, good evening.
今天是10月27号，10月27号，我们在伯克利这边，我们继续来研究佛说无量寿经。
So today is October 27th, and we are here at Berkeley Buddhist Monastery, continuing to investigate the Infinite Life Sutra.
好，我们今天的无量寿经的经文在122页，一开头，然后到这个第2段的前1行为止，这样子。
So on page 122, 在开始这边。
对。
So it's top of page 122.
Yeah， 还有在下面中间的第1行。
OK。
然后英文是在123页，123页。
The English on page 123.
好，我们大家来先念中文一遍，然后再念英文一遍。
So read Chinese and then English.
好，请大家合掌。
Palms together.
好，我们大家一起念啦。
然世人薄俗，共争不计实事，
以此济恶疾苦之中，情深隐悟，以至己济。无尊无卑，无贫无富，
少长
男女共有钱财，有无同然，有失是等。
贫
隐愁苦，累念积虑，唯心走时，无有安适。好，我们英文。
However, people in the world are shallow and coarse. They fight over matters of no urgency. Amidst dire evil and extreme suffering, they toil with their bodies to make a living. Noble or lowly, poor or rich, young or old, male or female, everyone worries over money. Regardless if people have money or not, they worry just the same. Wandering aimlessly, they live in anxiety and pain. Overcome by their troubles and controlled by their thoughts, they never have a moment of peace.
OK， 好，这样子，我们从这个122页开始呢，我们还是来做一些很浅的解释一下。这个然世人薄俗啊，共生无己之事啊，这个就是说世间的人啊，心地薄俗啊，就是轻薄，只是在事实上做些竞争那些不及的事情，这样子。
So Jingfo is just giving a simple explanation of this text. So I'll just use some different words just to explain it. I think the English is actually quite clear. But it says, in this world, we're often very superficial and coarse. Like we're rough, we're rude, we're unmannered, uncivilized. We fight over matters of no urgency, right? We just can turn on the TV and watch people debate things, which is like, really? Is that really important for the current state of the world? Amidst dire evil and extreme suffering, they toil with their bodies to make a living. Noble or lowly, 你还没有讲这个。
好，第二句呢，他讲这个在此饥饿疾苦之中，情深隐悟，以致给济，就是说在这个非常饥饿、非常饥苦饥饿呢，这个当中来勤苦这个我们的这个身啊，然后去经营一些事物，来谋求自己的这个生计，就是生活这样子。
So we often are in a lot of difficulties. You know, I think if many of us here are very blessed, but if you were to think about the state of the world, many people live in very dire circumstances. And they just go through day by day trying to make a living.
所以呢，无尊无卑，无贫无富，少长老男女共有钱财，就是说，你不管这个尊贵的或者卑贱的，或者是贫穷的或者富贵的，或者是年纪小的或者年长的，或者是男或者是女，每个人都共同忧心担心这个财富啊，钱财财富啊，只是为生活来担忧。
So here it talks about everyone. There might be rich or poor, noble or lowly, young or old, male or female. everyone, worries day and night over money, right? You can think about it in our current times, how true that is.
所以呢，在下面呢，经文有无同然，有失是等啊。所以你不管有钱或者是没有钱呢，都是同样的忧心，他们忧失的程度呢，都是相等的，都是相同的。
So people, regardless if they have money or not, they worry all the same, right? So just, if you have money, you worry about it. If you don't have money, you still worry about it. It's just constant worry.
所以在下面一句呢，就是贫因愁苦，累念积虑，唯心走死，无有安时。就是说，这些人呢，他们都是惶恐徘徊，在忧愁痛苦累积的这个忧虑，他们为贪心来奔走，这个所以要更多的钱财，这样他们就没有安定的这个时候。
So they wander around aimlessly, or we wander around aimlessly, not knowing what we're doing, and we just go through a lot of pain and anxiety, a lot of fear and consternation, and we get overwhelmed by our troubles, and we're kind of controlled by our thoughts. Our thoughts become oppressive, just keep pushing us on, and our sense of greed and wanting money and consuming is just actually consumes us, and so we never have a moment of peace. We can't find rest for our souls, our hearts.
所以这个经文中的这个薄俗啊，薄就是很薄的薄俗解释为轻薄的这个轻薄的这个习俗，也就是说社会的这个坏风气，坏的风气，这所谓社会的坏风气，就像赌博啦，或者是去不正当的这个场所啦，这些坏的风气呢，所以呢，在这个《汉书》上面有说啊，民间薄俗，就是民间呢，它渐渐的就薄俗，就是养成这个坏风气呢，它就是弃礼仪，就是说把这个礼节啊这一些的把它去掉了，没有这些礼仪的事情呢，那它就会触犯刑法，触刑罚，岂不是哀哉？这个就是一个非常悲哀的事情。
汉书是什么汉？
汉书它是一个书的名字。
Yeah, people know. Is that a classic of the Han people?
Yeah.
Do you know what the 汉书 is?
汉书应该是汉朝的那时候写的书。
Oh, Han Dynasty. Okay. So the first commentary is on the word shallow, maybe superficial, and in the commentaries it explains that this shallow refers to the the bad or harmful societal habits, or maybe cultural mores that we get involved with. So for instance, gambling, or going to inappropriate places, going to like a red light district, or places that are not appropriate. And there's a book in the Chinese classics called, I think, from the Han Dynasty, and it says that these kind of superficial or shallow aspects of culture do not have any propriety. There isn't kind of an uprightness to them, and it leads to a lot of suffering and problems. And this is actually very sad.
它会触犯刑法。好， 那个在我们经文上也有另外一个银平平银，它这个解释呢，它就是惶恐非常彷徨，就是徘徊走来走去的，不知道往哪里走好，犹豫不决，这个就是平银的一个解释。
平营就是最后面这个 wandering aimlessly. 平营. Oh yeah, so that's right. Jing Fo Shi explains the other word near the end about wandering aimlessly. It's not knowing where we're going. We're just wandering, kind of in circles, lost, confused.
走来走去的，不知道往哪里走。
我会讲一下刚刚第一个。Okay, I just thought maybe the first one, to kind of relate it to kind of America. We don't have a Han Dynasty classic for America, but I think we can definitely see many aspects of our society that we might say is shallow. I think we see it in the kind of racism. There's, sad to say, many instances of kind of white supremacy, and people do things that harm other people because somehow in their upbringing they got the idea that their race or their group is better than others. It can actually go out and kill or demean or hurt others based on that. That's really a kind of a shallow, superficial, and actually toxic kind of understanding of things. I think that's something that's quite prevalent in we see in our society. This kind of blindness that is there. And so that's kind of in its most, I think, obvious form. But then as we kind of start going down and bringing closer and closer to home, just looking at myself, definitely in my own heart, in my own life, there's definitely a conceit that can develop where I'm looking to be the best, be better than other people, and there's a kind of looking down. And maybe I learned it from, the culture, American culture, somehow thinking American culture is the best in some way. Or maybe my family, thinking that somehow the family that I grew up with is, favored in some way. Or maybe just myself, that I'm an important person that should get more than other people, And we just take on these very shallow, superficial, harmful ways of understanding the world. And it's so deep in us that we don't even see it operating because it's operating us. We don't see how we're being controlled by these very deep habituations that come from our childhood and upbringing. And so I think it's actually really worth thinking about, because Amitabha Buddha, or I think here Shakyamuni Buddha is actually explaining why living beings don't go to the Pure Land, right? And if we're not in the Pure Land, as I was describing in the very beginning there, we're not in Amitabha Buddha's light, it's because we keep ourselves out of it. How do we keep ourselves out of it? Well, by doing things that are shallow and coarse. We have blinders on. We don't see Amitabha Buddha's light. We don't see the joy that is all around us, the goodness that's all around us. 所以我想就是刚刚讲到那个中国可以说有汉经、汉书，我们美国呢可能没有说汉书，但是我想我们也有我们的可以说就说博俗的风气比方说这个民主的看不起，不知道怎么说，民主的 歧视，民族的歧视。我们看到在美国，我们在那个怎么说电视广播上、电视上，他们会是蛮悲伤的，但是常会有一些故事呢，有某某人呢拿一个枪啊，然后去杀人，因为他们觉得他们的民族呢可能是最重要的，别的看不起，甚至都可以去杀他们，去害他们，这个是对的。这个就是我们生活生命这个社会里面的一个薄俗就是非常可怜可悲的一件事情。可能我们看到这个是一个这样子的一个，这个是最伤害的、最不好的。但是如果我们要把它拉近一点，我可以说像美国长大，有人会想，我美国是最好的国家，就是我美国就很好。这个就是也是一个薄俗。我们把我们的文化呢往上提，把别的国家往下推。说中国文化也有这样子的，觉得中国是第一，中国第一，别的中国是最好的。别的这个文化也有会感觉到，怎么有这样子一个感觉呢？会好像看不起别人。这个是一个民主的一个方面，是薄俗的方式。但是我们家庭也会有这样子的薄俗，可能我们以为我们家庭呢很聪明啊，或者很成功啊，或者很特别啊，也会有这样子一个概念。或者我们对自己有这样子的一个想法，就是我很重要，我可以得到一些应该得到比别人多，这个也是一个薄俗的一个想法，一个风气。所以我们修行呢，是要慢慢的把这些可以说薄俗的这个风气要看破放下这个不容易，因为很多时候这些薄俗的风气我们都看不到的，就是好像理所当然的我们的环境就是这样子的，我们就以为我的文化就是最好的，我的家庭是最重要的，我是要最得到好处的，对，要得到便宜，要得到最好的，这个都是我们这个薄俗的这个一些风气。这里刚刚这个释迦牟尼佛就说，为什么众生不去极乐世界呢？这个就是为什么我们有这样子的薄俗的这些风气。我们有这个薄俗风气呢，不能就这个骄傲心呢，这个歧视心呢，就怎么样呢？让我们跟阿弥陀佛的光明有相应。阿弥陀佛的光明呢，虽然照到我们身中，但是我们看不到，我们感觉不到这些快乐，不是我们可以这个相应的。所以我们怎么要跟阿弥陀佛有相应呢？就要把这些现在净佛是我们要讲的这些东西呢，要看破放下。So yeah, just wanted to kind of make it something that in our lives we can actually connect with. It's if we really want to enter Amitabha Buddha's land, these are the things that are keeping us out. These are the things that somehow keep the cycle of suffering going. And you can reflect on for yourselves. What are those things in my culture, in my family, in my society, that I take for granted as just the way things are, but actually lead to suffering, actually lead out of Amitabha Buddha's light into the darkness of samsara. What are those things? Yeah. 好。
所以呢，我们今天晚上的这个经文呢，它是接前一些的经文，它是佛告弥勒菩萨，这就是告弥勒菩萨呢，他现在是菩萨嘛，所以他告这些诸天，还有这个天人， 还有人们他们所作所为啊，大家都是为了来争钱财，然后呢，使得大家呢都没有平安的生活，所以呢，这个是值得我们大家来深深的来思考这些事情。这个是给我们，其实佛告菩萨、弥勒菩萨呢，就是来告诉我们的一样的情况。
So here, if you look at the sutra text before this, the Buddha is actually talking to Maitreya Bodhisattva. And he's speaking to the bodhisattvas, devas, humans, and all the beings in the assembly. And he's explaining to them how living beings constantly worry over money. And because of their constant worrying over money, they have no real peace. They have no real happiness. And so although Shakyamuni Buddha is talking to Maitreya Bodhisattva in that assembly, he's also talking to us. He's also sharing with us. I thought actually Jing Foshu was talking a story that I think is quite apt, that actually one of the men here actually shared. Actually what kind of brought him into the Bodhi resolve was he was working very hard in startups, and trying to make money and trying to be successful and try to, what you do with a startup is you work really hard and you hope it will, actually catch on, and then there'll be an IPO, and then you'll make a lot of money, right? And then you do it again, and you can kind of really, become successful. And so I remember being kind of struck by his story because it was so simple, but it led to a very profound shift that I think it's worth for all of us who are in this world kind of trying to get ahead to realize, interesting. And so what happened was, I think he was talking, you can correct me if I got the story a little bit wrong, but I'm trying to get it from memory, talking to maybe another startup kind of founder, right? Somebody who was very successful. And I think he was asking him about doing startups, and they're saying, so we do a startup, we work really hard, but once we're successful, you're constantly worried that other startups will take you over. In the very beginning, you're this little company and you're kind of competing with the bigger companies, trying to outthink them, come up with a easier, kind of more efficient way to do something, and so you can get the market share. And then once you actually get the market share and you're up ahead in the front, then you're worried all the other people, all the other startups are looking at you now as the top, dog on the food chain. Okay, that's not the right metaphor, but how do you say it? The top, top of the food chain. And so they're not going for you. And he just realized, wow, this is endless. It's an endless kind of worrying, and even if you're successful, you're just caught in this cycle. He says, do I want to do this? Do I want to put in maybe 16-hour days, just working all the time, trying to get ahead, and then even when we get ahead, it's just more trying to stay ahead, right? Maybe this is not what I want to do. And it was such a big impact on him that he actually decided, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to reprioritize my life and put the Dharma in front. I don't know what his experience was, but perhaps he got a little bit more into the field of Amitabha Buddha's light. After switching from, worrying over money day and night, to say, actually, what I want to do is use my life to investigate the Dharma, investigate real principles, to understand what life's actually about. 所以我想有个故事，我们这边也有个句式，就讲的让我蛮，我记得在心里面，因为我觉得是非常可以说简单的，但是非常透破的。特别我们这个在 Silicon Valley 这个湾区，很多人要赚钱，刚刚就讲赚钱，他们要赚在我们这个 startup 中文叫什么 ？startup 公司就是开始这个公司叫什么？
一开始就是
创业公司做，就是小工作，你要创业，对不对？所以他说，你开始工作，每一天要 花16个小时工作，从早到晚一直在工作，因为呢，你要看到别人在你前面的，你要把他们的这个 market share， 他们 what's market share？
市场的
市场
占有率吧。
市场什么？
市场
份。
市场占有率吧。
市场占有率。
对，就是
市场占有率的这个，你要把他们的市场占有率拿到你这边来，那他就这样子一直要工作啊，要找怎么快的方式啊，有更效率的方式呢，怎么来得到第一，这你就可以赚到多一点钱。但是他跟一个别的这个创业的公司的很成功的人讲的时候，那个人就一直在那个人也在工作很多，他就说，对啊，我们可以说成功的时候，但是成功你还不能停，成功你一直要工作，因为你怕别的小公司呢，他要来吃你，他要来比你在前面，所以你一直要这样子来推，是做不完的。他就开始想，我就是从早到晚一直要这样子啊，这个真的值得吗？我真要花我的生命这样子花吗？他就觉得不要，我不要只有赚钱，我要什么是比较是重要的这些生命的道理。还好他小的时候有去道场，他妈妈带他去道场，所以他有一点佛法，他就去学佛法，然后就可以觉得这个是比较有道理的，所以我想他就从这样子的这个苦海，这个钱的忧虑的苦海，可以跳出来，说我想把我的这个生命啊，可以有机会可以学习佛法，非常难得的。So yeah, I think this little passage here is super applicable for the current times, and especially here in the Silicon Valley, having grown up here. I definitely can feel the sense of anxiety and concern and worry and aimlessness. I won't go in that story, but there's definitely stories of feeling aimless in Silicon Valley. There's a movie you can watch called The Race to Nowhere. The Race to Nowhere, and it was a very shown movie in our schools. And they would have these kids who would share about how they're working so hard in school, but they don't know where they're going. And there's a lot of depression and feeling like, just endless. What am I doing? 所以刚才说这个平印，我们在我们这个湾区这边也有这样子的一个感觉。有个电影叫我们在快跑到没有地方。I don't think that's a good translation. 就是说很多人在这边。很多年轻人呢，在学校呢用功读书，他们又很用功，但最后不知道去哪里。我们很用功读书读好，但不知道我们要去哪里。他们这个没有意义，就很多时候有这个很多压力，很多 depression 忧虑等等。
有的去自杀了。
有的也自杀。Yeah, quite a few also commit suicide, sadly. So anyways, this is definitely something that's part of our society. 好，有故事吗？
有这样子，刚才我们讲的就是说，要怎样子来得到平安快乐。那这个释迦牟尼佛的时候呢，他有一个银行家，这个银行家他是在守卫城，就是释迦牟尼佛的那个住的地方啊。守卫城呢有一个银行家，这个他的这个年轻儿子呢，他因为那时候他们有比丘去跟他化缘，然后呢他就跟着来请教这个比丘，要怎样子来做才可以来解脱我们生命的苦难。
So, in Shravasti, this story is told by Shakyamuni Buddha, and it's during Shakyamuni Buddha's time. So in Shravasti, there was a banker who had a young son. So one day, a bhikshu, a monk, was going on alms round. And this banker saw this bhikshu, and he asked the monk, how do we get free of the suffering in this world?
然后呢，那这个比丘呢，告诉他这个年轻的这个儿子呢，他是说啊，你可以把你所赚的钱财啊，刚才我们说大家都争财在那里争钱呐、他说你可以把他这个钱财呢分作3份啊，来一份呢去投资做生意，另外一部分呢来家庭的开销，最后一部分呢你去可以做慈善，就是去捐给那一些痛苦的人啊，这样子。
Oh, sorry. This person who asked the monk was actually the young son of the banker. So imagine there's a banker with a son, probably pretty wealthy, right? And so he's asking this monk, how do we get free of the suffering in the world? And the monk probably saw that he was from a wealthy banking background, and so he told him about money. He said, okay, so you can take your money and divide it into 3 portions. One portion, you invest it in your business. The capital, right? Invest it in your business. The second, you use it to sustain your family, take care of your family. And the third portion, you use it to do good, to give, to help those who are in suffering.
所以呢，这个年轻的这个儿子啊，他就遵照这个比丘的话去做啦。然后呢，他做了以后呢，他就又来问这个比丘，我下一步要怎么做？
So this young son was actually very, what do you call it? Very willing to follow. So he carried out the instructions of the monk, and he did that. He invested 1/3 of his money, spent 1/3 to take care of his family, and 1/3 he gave away and did good. So after doing that, he came back to the monk and said, okay, I followed your instructions. What next? What's the next step?
Yeah. 所以呢，比丘又告诉他，第一个呢，你要皈依3宝，守5戒，这个是第一个。然后第二个呢，你还在守10戒，这个守10个戒。然后第3个呢，你要出家修行。所以呢，他后来他也都一一来做奉行。最后他也出家啦。
So the monk replied back, so number 1, what you need to do is take refuge, take the 3 refuges, and take the 5 precepts. And then step number 2, you can take the 10 precepts. And step number 3, you can leave home and cultivate the way and become a monk. And so this young man followed this step by step, and he actually left home.
所以呢，这个比丘出家以后呢，他当然有老师来教他阿毗达摩论啊，这个就是说这个老师教他阿弥达摩论，它是一个戒律，他这个出家以后呢，他觉得这个要学的东西太多了，戒律又太严又太多，所以他没有足够的自由。
So what happens? Now he's a monk. So he starts to learn the Abhidharma, and he also begins to learn the Vinaya, the precepts and the Vinaya. And he begins to feel, wow, these are just so many rules. There's so much to learn. I don't feel like I have any freedom. Feel like no freedom, Jing Fosher?
所以他认为还是做素人啊，就是还是没有出家的生活还比较好，比较自由。由于他这样子的怀疑跟不满呢，他就心里呢非常的郁闷，这样子闷闷不乐的。
So he thought to himself, gosh, I just have so much more freedom as a layperson, you know. I thought I just so much more free as a layperson to be able to do what I want. So he started having this doubt and this kind of sense of discontent, right? And he started having, what's this?
郁闷就是心里不快乐了。
He's not happy. He's kind of got this kind of maybe a shadow inside. This kind of 郁闷. It's like meng. It's like you feel like there's a pressure almost on you, right? You feel like depressed. I feel depressed. It's like you just feel like, your energy is low all the time.
所以呢，他就身体呢就渐渐的消瘦，他身体也就消瘦下来。那佛陀这时候佛陀知道了这个事情，就告诉他说你如果能够控制你的心念呢，什么事情就可以了，你就好好去收你的心念，就是说你要来防止你的心念呢，你就安住在那里，那你就可以得到这个安乐快乐。
So, because he was depressed and no energy and, discontent, so his body actually became much more thin and kind of sickly. He kind of was weak. And so the Buddha saw this, he knew about this, and so he spoke to this monk, the banker's young son, and he said, if you are able to control your mind, your thoughts, then you will not 就没有什么事情需要再控制。So if you're able to really be in control of your thoughts and your mind, then there's not anything else you actually have to control. And if you apply your energy there to really gather in your thoughts, your mind, then you will actually have real happiness, real peace.
好，我们这个故事讲到这里，我想我们要还是来回到我们以前有讲过这个月光王，他把这个头颅来布施给一个跟他嫉妒一个国王的这个人因为这个他月光王他做得非常好，他的国家都统治得非常，人民非常的快乐平安。然后呢，这个有一个旁边的国王就很嫉妒他，他说这个月光王他不除掉他呢，他的这个名字呢就没有办法来出头。所以呢，我们今天再继续讲这个故事。
Okay, so Jingpo is going to start another story that actually is a continuation of a story from before about King Moonlight. And so the setting of this story is there's a king named King Moonlight who had a very prosperous, peaceful, happy kingdom. He was a very good ruler, and everything was copacetic. Everything was wonderful. And however, there was a neighboring king who was jealous of King Moonlight. And he thought, gosh, King Moonlight is so prosperous, so successful, so famous, so well loved by everyone. No one pays attention to me. No one pays attention to me. I should be number one. I need to get rid of him. I need to, find a way that I can be number one.
所以呢，他就有一位婆罗门，他就去这个不好的这个国王呢，他说他可以去把这个月光王把他头拿下来，所以呢他这个婆罗门呢，他就去到这个月光王那边。但是很多的，因为那个神们知道他是要来拿月光王的头，就不给他进来。最后月光王知道了，他说要把这个城门把它打开，给他进来。
So there was a Brahmin who went to this jealous king and told him, I have a way to bring back King Moonlight's head for you. And so this Brahmin went off to the kingdom of King Moonlight. But at the gate, you could say, of the kingdom, the guards there, knowing the evil intentions of this Brahmin, didn't let him into the kingdom. But when King Moonlight heard that this Brahmin was being stopped at the front gate, he said, you need to open the gate and let him in.
所以呢，他进来以后呢，然后这个那时候有大业大臣，因为这个月光王有一个叫做大业大臣的这个大臣他的名字叫做大业。他自己想这个婆罗门来要祈求这个国王的头呢，这样子我来做7个冰头，就是七个用500亩这个金子来做这个做这个头，这个宾婆罗王的这个头，然后呢，他就是说用这个头来给这个婆罗门这样子。
So maybe just get a little bit more context. So this Brahmin was actually going to come to King Moonlight and ask for King Moonlight's head. And so King Moonlight had a prime minister named Great Moon. And so Great Moon, knowing about this plot of the Brahmin, thought to himself, I need to save the king's life. So he thought of maybe one way I can do this is, since the Brahmin wants the king's head, I can make some jeweled heads. So he made some actual heads out of jewels, 7 of them, that were, you can see it's 500 mu, maybe the 500 pieces of gold, maybe made out of maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars each, right? So he made 7 of these really precious heads.
然后呢，他就跟这个他这个婆罗门讲这个我把这个7个头做的这个给你你可以过程的这个妻子，这个珍宝的车，还有相貌，这个都还有你都可以都可以得到。所以一切的外物呢，你用这个都比这个你拿这个生肉布施呢，还好。就因为你这个拿的这个国王这个头水灵灵的，这样子不好，你就拿着这个7个用金子做的这个头会更好的，你不用去拿这个水灵灵的头，这样子不好，是不净物的，不净之物。
So the prime minister tried to reason with the Brahmin, saying, "Here, you've come for the king's head. I can give you these 7 precious treasure heads for you. They're very valuable. You can take these heads and they will make you very wealthy. You will have so much. You can get anything you want with them. They're just so valuable. And what do you want to do with the king's like flesh head? His physical head. It's bloody. It's it's not really that great. Why do you want it? It's not pure. It's just it's just a head that's gonna be bloody and disgusting. So here I have these 7 precious treasured heads for you. You could take this and be very wealthy. Very reasonable, right?
Yeah, 所以呢，这个你这个大业大臣呢，就跟他说啊，我这个7宝的这个头啊，跟你来贸易，来就跟你交换啦，这个事情啊，但是这个婆罗门讲啊，他说我不用这些啦，我就是要得到这个月光王的头，才合我的这个所志愿的，就是才合我的心愿的。
So he said he's hoping to make a deal with the Brahmin, right? To say, okay, give up your wish to take the king's head, and I'll give you these 7 precious heads. But the Brahmin said, I don't take your deal. I already made my vow. I already made my resolve. I want the king's head.
所以呢，这时候这个大业大臣呢，他就用种种的这个来跟他来说明啊，但是他都不听啊，不回转啊，所以呢，他当时就非常的愤慨啊，愤怒啊。这个大业大臣呢，他的心啊，就分裂了，7分啊，7个他的大业大臣的心呢，心就裂开了7份，然后就死在这个月光王的前面。
所以这个大月生气啊，大月很生气，
他非常悲恨，悲恨就非常的悲观啊，非常的
不高兴。悲恨是生气吗？
有一点愤慨了，对了，对，就是说他这个婆罗门他都不听话的，他就后来他自己的心啊就裂成7份。
So you could say Great Moon, this prime minister, kept trying to persuade this Brahmin to change his mind, but the Brahmin was set, determined in his ways, and so finally this prime minister, Great Moon, was heartbroken, was just very sad, kind of maybe a bit angry or upset, and his actually heart broke into 7 pieces, and he died before King Moonlight.
所以呢，这时候这个月光王呢，他就勒令呢，就是说他下令，告诉所有的臣子呢，他来7天以后，7天以后，他要拿着他的头来布施给这个婆罗门。
So at this point, King Moonlight said in 7 days he would offer his head to this Brahmin. He'd give his head to this Brahmin.
所以呢，我想这个故事我们讲到这里，因为呢，这个大业大臣后面还有蛮多的，因为这个大业大臣是谁？我们以前讲过，他是比释迦牟尼佛先往先死的，来涅槃的，这个大业大臣就是比他先涅槃的舍利佛。
So we'll maybe stop at this point. It's like a cliffhanger story. So if you wanted to know what happens next, what happens when King Moonlight says, I'm going to give my head to this Brahmin. You have to come back to listen. But just in terms of telling the story and relating it to the past, actually, this prime minister was Shariputra in the previous life. If people read the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, you'll see that Shariputra actually goes before the Buddha to request to be able to leave this world before the Buddha leaves this world, because he can't really bear to see the Buddha leave. And so, so similarly, in this situation, this happened also in the past, when Shariputra was actually a prime minister for King Moonlight. King Moonlight was Shakyamuni Buddha.
Yeah, 这个月光王其实就是后来的释迦牟尼佛。
Yeah, the King Moonlight was actually the Shakyamuni Buddha. And just so people guess, who do you think the Brahmin was?
好，我们
为他们谁是波罗门 ？Yeah, Jason got it. 那个波罗门是提婆达多，对不对？The Brahmin was actually Devadatta.
So, 后面我会讲，后面有讲，会这个故事会最后都就会出现了，出现最后，他会讲这个谁是谁，谁是谁。
So the Buddha later will explain who's who. Right, so these karmic connections are ancient and long-standing. So for us to be here in the Dharma together, for those present here and also those online, who knows what our relationships are? Maybe one of you was a king and another was a prime minister. Maybe you were a general and others were lieutenants in the army.
因为真的有一些人啊，他不忍心啊，看到人死啊，或者是，所以他就先去涅槃去了。所以这个故事很值得我们来用慈悲心来看这个故事。
So there are people who cannot bear seeing their loved ones go, or let's say loved ones, those they deeply revere, leave, and so they enter nirvana first. And so the story is really worth reflecting on with a heart of compassion.
好，我们下面再讲一个故事，然后呢，我们晚上有那个观世音菩萨的这个一些观音赞，我们也要讲。好，我们再讲一个故事呢，这个也是这个释迦牟尼佛他在世的时候这个故事。
So we'll now tell another story about Shakyamuni Buddha's time.
他有一群的这个守卫城的这个女士啊，就是说太太们呢，来东园鹿子母来参加斋戒，就是来受八关斋戒啊这些的。那这个里面呢，它这个是一个比舍切的这个他是来兼这个经舍的，然后呢，他们这些来这些女士们呢，他们来问比舍切啊，比舍切当然也是一个女的啦，那他说我们要怎样子来才能获得这个升天的福报，就是说去天上的福报，那很多的这个妇女，她们都回答说，第一个就是要获得家庭幸福，然后这个第二个呢，也就是说要能够有第一胎能够生儿子，然后这个年轻的这个小姐妹呢，她们就说希望有一个如意郎君，就是说有一个非常好的丈夫啊。
Okay, so this story begins. It's about some wives, some women who lived in Shravasti, and they, I think, came to the monastery, and they took the 8 precepts, on these those lunar days. So they took the 8 precepts, and there's one of the laywomen was named Bisa Chue, who Bisa Chue, and she built the monastery. She helped kind of, just like where some of us are helping to build Rodavihara, she put over her strength to kind of help establish a monastery. And the woman, asked her, how can we be reborn in the heavens? Now, some of the women, they kind of, had some ideas about this, and so they said, well, number 1, you need to make sure your family is prosperous. You have a good family, right? Number 2, you need to give birth to a son. This is a traditional society. Number 3, you want to marry a good husband. 如意郎君，就是说他是一个好的丈夫。好怎么说是好？如意就是他，
如意就是很心里很如意。
那个如意？如意郎是。So
郎君就是丈夫吗？
郎君so I'm not sure what the 如意。
如意就心里很快乐啊。
It's a very happy, kind of a well-mannered husband.
所以这个是年轻的小姐他们希望的。
This is what the young woman wish for.
所以呢，这个比索切呢，他就知道这些答案，就带他们来释迦牟尼佛那里来请教释迦牟尼佛。
So these were the answers of these young women, and so Bisa Chue brought them to the Buddha to see how the Buddha would respond. So this is actually interesting. I don't know if, probably not everyone has those 3 as your, priorities in life. But what's interesting to see how the Buddha respond to somebody who does have those priorities in life.
所以呢，那时候师尊就是释迦牟尼佛，就跟他们说比手切这个五蕴我们的眼耳鼻舌身意五蕴嘛，它不停的生老病死的一个病一直在变化。人呢，一旦出生呢，就会老，那最后到死亡。
So the Buddha told Bisa Chue that all of us have the 5 skandhas. They get old, get sick, and then die. The moment we're born, these 5 skandhas begin to start aging, all the way to the point where we die.
所以呢，我们呢，大部分的人呢，他都不会去从这个轮回中来解脱，一直在留恋，一直在轮回，在人世间轮回。这个众生呢是很难来了解这个事情，那也是只有克服这个欲望呢，才能够得到真正的幸福。
So Buddha said, most people do not think about this cycle of birth and death and wanting to get free. They're mostly just caught, just stuck, just trapped in this constant turning wheel. And and it's only through reducing desire, you could say restraining desire, that we can get free.
所以呢，这个就是说，要怎样子得到真正的这个幸福。
Then you can have true happiness. You can be truly happy.
好，我们呢还有一点时间，我们再来讲一个真正呢要能够往生梵天的方法。这个也是在法纪经里面呢，这个 要怎样子真正往生去梵天的一个方法。这个舍利佛的这个属书啊，舍利佛是大弟子嘛，他的属书是一位婆罗门。
So,
uncle,
yeah. So, 这个故事以前我想就是讲几句就是关于这个故事。So actually, just to give a little bit of reflection on the last story, it's interesting how the Buddha actually took the ideas and you could say priorities of the woman, which were what, wanting to have a prosperous family, wanting to give birth to a son, wanting to find a Prince Charming. Very normal, I think, wishes, in our society. For men, it would probably be another list would be something like wishing, to have a successful career, finding a good wife, probably also having a good family. There are things in our society which are things that we think, oh, if I could just have those things, I would be happy. And so when we meet the Dharma, I don't think the Buddha is saying those things are bad per se, but he says look deeper. Look deeper. To say actually, when we're in this world, in this body, in our 5 skandhas, we are actually moving towards death, right? Moment to moment, we're actually aging. And those things that we think will bring us real happiness, actually, in the end, will also get old and die. The best family we can have in the world, sad to say, families sometimes don't get along, Even if you try your best to have the best possible family, sometimes things don't work out. Sometimes children are doing things that harm themselves, and parents can just watch on the side, right? Or a spouse has some traumatic thing happen to them and they become very hard to live with. So family, okay. And then if, we have the good fortune, the blessings to be able to have a family that's very harmonious, very caring, very supportive, happy family for our whole lives, still comes a day when we pass away and that family structure disperses. So unreliable when we really look at it with the Dharma lens. Having a son, I think now in current times, there's actually a pretty serious boy crisis. People can kind of go read about that, about boys and men actually committing suicide more than women, that their depressions are kind of going up. There's actually a kind of a crisis around masculinity. And so maybe people don't really want to have sons as much now. But in the same spirit, in ancient society, there's a sense of, like carrying on your lineage, carrying on your, your wealth and status into the future. Again, is that reliable? Even if you have a son, and they are a good son, let's say, and they carry on the family line, well, how long will that last? For how many generations? 5, 10, 20, but in the end still. That's it. No more. Right? And then number 3, finding a husband or finding a wife or finding a partner. It's an important part of life, but at the same time, that also comes and goes. And so the Buddha is saying, actually, I want to give you something which brings real happiness. Is rather than seeking all these stuff, wife, children, family, say actually, go back one step. That wanting of those things actually is causing your misery. And if you can be satisfied with less, you'll find more happiness. That's pretty radical. I think in our society in America, do we ever really hear that? Actually be happy with less. You have enough. We don't hear that in the advertising. We don't see that in the movies. Usually more the better. Number one is the best. So just as a note, and that there's something actually very important here, that where the Buddha actually shifts, the paradigm from what those women had to something that's actually deeper. 我就不讲中文了，但是我想讲一下，就是关于佛陀怎么来帮助这些年轻的妇人呢？可以说不是求世间的快乐，真正得到一个解脱的快乐，看破放下，自主常乐。然后之前刚刚就是讲一个故事。So this next story is about how to be reborn in the Brahma heavens, and it's about Shariputra's uncle, who was actually a Brahmin.
所以呢，舍利弗就去问他的这个叔叔啊，你有没有做任何的功德？他的叔叔回答说啊，我们每个月呢都去供养，每个月他有供养这个裸身的苦行者。裸身啊，就是没有印度啊，他们有一个就是没有穿衣服的这些苦行的人，希望将来能够升梵天。
So Venerable Shariputra went to talk with his uncle, ask his uncle, have you cultivated any merit and virtue? And the uncle said, yes, every month I go and make offerings to the naked ascetics. And I would, by making offerings to these naked ascetics, I hope to get reborn in the Brahma world.
那舍利弗就告诉他说啊，他的老师呢，没有讲这个往生的这个方法，没有，他也不知道这个往生梵天的方法。然后呢，舍利弗就来带领他的叔叔去见释迦牟尼佛。
So Venerable Shariputra said, oh, I don't know how to be reborn in the Brahma world. I never asked. How about we go together to see the Buddha to see how he would respond to this question? So Venerable Shariputra with his uncle went to the Buddha to ask the question about how to be reborn in the Brahma world.
所以呢，他就请佛陀来开示，然后呢，佛陀就向舍利弗的叔叔，他的叔叔讲啊，供养一汤匙的这个食物啊，只要一汤匙的食物给真正的圣人啊，真正的这个圣人啊，就是有修行的人啊，比你供养那些不值得供养的人要好得多啊，不值得当然就是说那些裸体苦行者的要好得多。
So when they made a request, the Buddha's response to the request about how to be born in the Brahma world, he told the uncle, Shariputra's uncle, that the merit and virtue, the goodness that comes from making one spoonful of an offering to a sage, is far surpasses that of the offerings that he's making to these naked ascetics, that they're not really cultivating the kind of a proper path. Maybe if I'm wanting to make a modern reference, it'd be maybe you make offerings to hippies. Some hippies, in some commune, are completely naked, and you think, oh wow, they're really spiritual, so I'm going to give them some offerings. That you, by giving them offerings, of course in India is a different context. They're probably trying to live very simple lives without any clothing, and who knows? I don't know exactly what the naked ascetic tradition is in India, but the Buddha's point was what they're cultivating isn't actually really beneficial, and so making an offering to him isn't as meritorious as making an offering to a sage. Okay.
好，我们每个礼拜都有我们讲八法，释迦牟尼佛他这佛有八法讲法， 然后这个时间上也有8法。
So 八音对不对
8音对。
Yeah, so there's 8 sounds,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Eight
那我们
tunes.
今天
tones.
晚上呢，我们来做这个8音，8音呢，我们晚上要来做观世音菩萨这个8音。
So tonight we want to do the 8 tones of Guanyin Bodhisattva.
这个我们稍微解释一下，观世音菩萨他这个赞观音菩萨赞有讲过，观音菩萨妙难酬，清净庄严累劫修。
So we wanted to go over the praise of Guanyin Bodhisattva. It says, Guanyin Bodhisattva is wonderful past gratitude, pure and clear her adornments, gained through ages long.
浩浩红莲安足下，弯弯秋叶守眉头。
See vast a red lotus flower rests beneath her foot. Bay curve of an autumn moon is in the crescent of her brows.
好，然后瓶中甘露常遍洒，手中杨柳不计秋。
Everywhere and constantly sweet dew sprinkles from her vase. In her hand the willow branch, through the countless autumns.
千处祈求千处应，苦海常作渡人舟。
Prayers depart 1,000 hearts, and 1,000 hearts she answers. Sailing the sea of suffering, she crosses people over.
千处祈求千处应，苦海常作渡人舟。
又讲这个的。Prayers depart 1,000 hearts, and 1,000 hearts she answers. Sailing the sea of suffering, she crosses people over.
南无普陀山琉璃世界大慈大悲观世音菩萨。
Homage to the greatly kind and compassionate Bodhisattva of the Crystal Land, who dwells on Patola Mountain and contemplates the sounds of the world.
好，我们现在大家来听一下这个有普陀山的这个歌，大家可以欣赏，大家也可以看荧幕上我们有播放，然后也有听到声音。
So now we will play Guanyin Bodhisattva praise. There's also a video, so you can enjoy the movie too.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, he does. He has it.
Yeah. Yeah. Amitabha.
Yeah,
好
dealing with groceries.
Yeah， 我们今天晚上的讲法我们就到这里。然后呢，下礼拜四我们因为这个西方三圣啊，阿弥陀佛，然后然后这个旁边是观世音菩萨还有大势至菩萨，所以我们下一次是会来播放这个大势至菩萨这个歌曲。好，我们今天晚上跟大家来讲这个，我们就到此为止。祝大家平安吉祥快乐。
Okay, so that concludes our evening sutra lecture. I'll just say some trivia. Do people know where that song's lyrics come from? What sutra that's from? Does that sound familiar? You can translate the English to English. It says, Namo, homage to the greatly compassionate Bodhisattva of Guanshiying. May I quickly attain Su Zi Ichie, quickly know all dharmas. That's the first line. What sutra does that come from? Not the lotus. It comes from the Great Compassion Repentance. But where does the Great Compassion Repentance get it from? The Rani Sutra. Bingo. 5 points for the gentleman in the front row. So yes, that's from the Dharani Sutra. How? Okay, so now we'll do the dedication of merit. And next week we will play some music around great strength bodhisattva, because Amitabha Buddha has two helpers, Guanyin Bodhisattva and great strength. Okay?
Okay, 好，大家请合掌。
Please put your palms together. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with love. share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. Okay, so that concludes our evening lecture. Hope everyone can join us for next week. Also, we have a few announcements, so please don't go yet. November 4th to the 6th, we have an Amitabha session online. You can find information on our website, berkeleymonastery.org, and you can sign up to also put in some memorial plaques. And on November 1st at 6:30 p.m., we will be showing a movie about monks in the mountains of China, hermit monks in China. So hope you can join us. You'll find that info at berkeleymonastery.org. 所以我们星期11月4号到6号11月4号到6号我们有个阿弥陀山，欢迎大家参加。我们 Berkeley 道场的网站会找到资料，也可以报名那个八关斋戒跟那个写牌位。对 ，There's 8 precepts and also the memorial plaques if you wish to join. And then on November 1st, we have a movie that we're showing about called On the Mountain Path, which talks about hermit monks in China. So really, you can say this movie shares the stories of our tradition, the roots of our tradition. 6:30 p.m. 星期二6点半。对啊，我们可以一起看。晚课我们就可能要提早做，还是蒙山提早做？好，OK，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛。